Gary know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, we're not going there. Morning to you, Gary Griffith. Unmute. Hold on.
Good morning.
Morning, how you going?
Fine, thank you.
Boy, you're looking slim again.
I know because the campaign did him good. His face slimmed down.
19 pounds. I can't wait for the next election.
It shows. You just need another local government now when you're good to go. or general. But general, you're back to when you was 25, boy.
Hopefully.
I don't think we want to hear 25 again. Based on the information we have, we don't want to hear 25.
That was a good year.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Please.
Don't say it. Good morning, Gary Griffith. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Try to get it out of my head.
Yeah.
You know it's not going to happen. You're going to...
I'm behaving myself. I ain't able. We had a poll this morning, which is this.
That's the number you sent me, Gary?
Pardon?
That's the number you sent me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Marsha Walker has put a post on her Facebook page. She has some issues with Mrs. Pasabi Sessa and says she's ruining her legacy. What thinkst thou?
Sure. Good morning to you all and all of your listeners. The answer with me on that question is simple. That is not my business. I am the political. I thought I was going to walk into that trap. Yeah, like.
It was your business before you enter your accommodation with the UNC. You had quite a lot to say, though.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, all right. You had a lot to say. You didn't seem to be in disagreement then, but of course, a week in politics is
a lifetime. No, but I don't think I ever made any public comment pertaining to that. And even now, more so, I am part of an alliance. I think it would be totally irresponsible of me to give any public comment, especially if it is on a negative perspective. Saying something from a positive perspective to state that I think it is improper can actually have, now it becomes a debate about what the NTA thinks about the UNC. That is not our business. The UNC has to deal with their issues. The NTA will deal with our issues. What I can state is what we need to look at, however, is data. I think it is so interesting that there's always this degree of concern about who should lead the UNC. The UNC and the NT Alliance just defeated the PNM by 60,000 more votes. I think if I do my math, that's almost 30% more. 60,000 in a 30% election turnout. In a general election, it's usually 60%. So that means you multiply that by 2, you get 120,000 difference. That is exact the amount that Kamala Persad-Bissessar defeated the PNM by in 2010, 120,000 votes. So if there's a concern,
you make these statements. That is a false analogy, and you know that. That is a statement running with mathematical logic that has no grounding in evidence. It is a projection.
No, well, actually not, Paul, because if you look at the data now, in 2023 local government election, the PNM acquired 150,000, the Alliance got 190. This was a 30% turnout.
Right, so but you're transcribing that onto a general election as if it's going to be the same.
Well, in fact, I agree, it would be different because in a general election, that is where the third constituency kicks in much more than the base constituency. So you're actually going to get a gap even more than the 60,000 difference. So you do the maths. If it is at a 30% local government, PNM got 130,000. In a general election, you multiply by 2 because it's from 30% to 60%. The alliance would have been between the UNC and the NT from 190 multiplied by 2 to 380, which is almost identical to the 2010 general election.
All those mathematical suggestions are just projections, and you know that. So just to say that it's naturally going to be so is inaccurate.
But Paul, remember, you look at in a local government election, it is usually base support of the UNC and PNM that turns out the base, because they don't care any election.
I agree with that. But to transpose that as if you can just multiply it by 2 for a general election, any political answer to it, that's a misnomer.
Well, Paul, no, all right. But if you say that, then the poll that you are doing right now is 20 times worse.
We never say our poll is scientific. We always say it's unscientific. So don't make an analogy. This is classic Gary Griffith. You can't win this argument, so you attack. We are a real strategic trained. So you can't win this argument, so you move down the argument. Anyway, what is accurate is that your vote, you got 25% of the votes to enable you to get an alderman in Mr. Nahous. That is accurate. Right, so let's focus on that. Why Paul Nahous?
Why not? The fact is,
I'm just asking. There must be a reason that you chose him. You have several options,
and I will say why not. Now there's an unfortunate situation here, Paul, that where the government speaks about local government reform. The most basic thing to change in local government reform is that situation with the alderman. It is as ridiculous as you could get. So you have 16 seats in Samuel Lavantil, for example. And you can only have 4 aldermen. A party, if the party gets 80 or 90% of the votes, they will get 4 aldermen. But you still have to select 16 aldermen to put on the list. And if you don't put 16, if you put 15, you're not entitled to get 1. It is totally ridiculous. That is what is causing all the bacchanal now with the UNC, well, not the controversy with Sangre Grande, with Joe Tony. Why you must put down 16 names knowing that only 4 maximum could be appointed? You are setting the tone for confusion, bacchanal, gossip. It is not required. So in Diego Martin, for example, we had to put 10 names, even though we knew that we cannot get more than 4 persons appointed. So you had to just throw names there. And that sometimes it gives people the impression, well, there's a good possibility I could become an alderman. Having said that, the individuals that we had, there was a very good batting lineup. We had an individual who was the #1 goalkeeper for the Soca Warriors for 10 years. We had another individual who was the #1 goalkeeper for the national hockey team for 20 years, and a previous PNM alderman, someone who's a 3-time ex-tempo champion. We had a previous COP councillor in Wazim Daniel. So we had several big, powerful names in that list for alderman for Diego Martin. As it pertains to Paul Nahous, what I do, my style is different. I'm not saying it's the best way, but as a political leader, it's not for me to just impose a name on persons because of who I feel should be the best person. I'm involved a lot in dialogue and communication, similar to what I did as a security minister, a soldier, a commissioner of police. So I asked for the input of the members of the governance team of the NTA, as well as the 8 candidates, because they are the ones who must have a part to play. And it was virtually unanimous that Paul Nahous fits the bill. And also it is to be known that he was also an alderman for the PNM. My job was not to put somebody in there to cause bacchanal and play a catcher. It is to find someone who can work with the rest of the corporation to assist in the development of Diego Martin.
What does this mean for the NT? I mean, this is your first election outing and you have representation in a local government election in what many consider to be the start of a national election campaign heading to 2025.
Well, it is important. I think in the last, since 2013, I think it's 10 years since any other political party has any representation in government or local government. 10 years. The last time would have been probably 2013. I think there was just 1 or 2. So what we have done is now we brought back that concept of that bridge constituency, that 3rd constituency. We are back on the political map. It's a small step, but it is a step in the right direction. And I think that the importance of this, people are not really understanding the significance of what the NT has achieved. I mean, if you look at the 31 seats we went up with, Paul, we were like the kamikaze group. We went up there, these were the 31 hardest PNM seats, hardest. And people said, Gary, you should have asked for a safe seat. Why? We have now developed, we want to justify our position in the political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. And when you look at certain places like Bellevue, Bosse, in 2019, the PNM got 1,500 votes to 500. You're talking about 1,000 votes the PNM won that seat by. This time they won by, I think it's less than 200 votes. When you look at Lupino La Florissant, the PNM won that seat by over 1,000 votes in 2019. We voted down to 170. The same thing with Woodbrook. We lost that seat by 110 when before it was over 400. Similar situations in St. Lucian, Cocorite, and Cameron, Mocha, Bosse, 2. All of these seats, the PNM would have won by 900 to 1,500 votes, and we were able to cut it down to less than 400, less than 300. So you're talking about the safest seats that we turned almost every single PNM safe seat in the local government to a marginal. And that says a lot about a party that is just less than a year old. So we have done a lot. It is very significant. And I'll make quickly add, there are certain critics who will always see the glass half empty based on jealousy, based on them wanting to have been there. There's a political party, they lost all their deposits, I think. 6,000. I'm not going to call Philip Alexander name today, I promise. I'm not going to go down that road. But so you lose all your deposits and you're speaking about you are the third party. But what we did was not just to achieve ourselves in the political landscape in going after the PNM's safest seats by turning them all into marginal, but because of our contribution, it assisted the UNC to get extra seats in Sangre Grande, San Fernando, cut heavy inroads into Arima and Tunapuna, where the UNC would have been losing those seats by over 1,000 votes, and now they were seats where it is that they were losing by 20, 30 odd votes. So it showed this is not just about the NTA putting a foothold and getting an alderman. It is showing that concept of uniting political parties, what it can do, and you would have seen the difference in Sangre Grande, Arima, Tunapuna, Piarco, and San Fernando.
Wouldn't you say that saying that those PNM seats are now marginal a little hyperbolic?
Well, no, in local government election, Richard, anything that is over 500, 600, and again, looking at all, I could give you the numbers, the PNM seats, those 31 PNM seats, the PNM won in 2019 by 850, 750, 1,000, 1,300, 800, 950, 1,000, 2,000, 2,300, the list goes on. Those are what you call in local government election terms safe seats. When you turn those to them only winning by 200 and 300, that now becomes anything that's 200, 300 in local government election term is marginal. So there's a difference in marginal and safe in local government election term to a general election. The UNC lost St. Joseph by 800 votes in 2020. That is still a marginal seat. So that is my point, where it is you look in local government election terms. And again, it is unfortunate that how it is drafted, like for point 14, for example, when you add all of the votes together for the 6 seats, it could come up to probably 1.5 of some of the seats that the UNC won, which is what you need about local government reform. Having 14 corporations that is so different, where it is you see 90% of virtual yellow on the map of Trinidad, and then you see in red, you say, well, how is that 7-7? Because you have certain corporations that, and really and truly, if you do that change, it should be 19 odd corporations. And then you would have seen the difference based on 190,000 votes for one team and 130,000 for another. But then you're seeing it 7-7.
Yeah. Tell me something. You when we talked about the poll, you said well, that's not your business. Basically, whether she is ruining her legacy or not, you're not getting into that. But you are aligning yourself with the UNC. If the UNC leadership was to change, does that force the NTA to reevaluate the alliance?
Well, any political party or governance team that runs a political party, we will listen to the rank and file of the supporters, similar to what I did in the selection of the alderman. You must have communication. It can never be, which has always been the bad situation. One individual says, I want Gary Griffith as commissioner, and everybody, yeah. And then he says, okay, I changed my mind. And the same individuals get on like these train seals in Orlando, and they start applauding, saying yes. There's going to be difference with everything that is done. On a regular basis, political parties must always evaluate and look and see what decisions must be made for those who support that political party and who want the development of Trinidad and Tobago. So as I said, what happens with the UNC? We are not going to go in there in any way. At this time, the person who is the political leader is working with us. My point of interest is that someone was one of two political leaders were involved in something that got 190,000 votes. And there's always this big debate as to changing political leaders. But what happened to the one who just got 130,000 votes? There's never a concern. And sometimes this is the way it is you speak about political maturity. Because I know several very senior officials in the PNM always want to have this man removed, but they are not going to say it. But in other political parties, everybody wants to be a spokesman. Everybody wants to do a press release. Everyone wants to make a statement. And that is your right. That is democracy. But I tell you, it is interesting that there's a demand for one to leave with 190,000 votes and another who was annihilated in Tobago 14-1, who just got 130,000 votes to 190,000, and you're not hearing anything. And that shows political maturity and discipline.
We had Anita Haynes on yesterday, and we asked her about the drop in votes between 2019 to 2023 in the local government election, in what had been an intense campaign for both major political parties and the entrance of yourself as a political party, the NTA, PP, PDP, and about 12 or 14 independent candidates. However, in spite of the intensity of that campaign, votes dropped. Anita Hayden's contention was that the major political parties both needed to look at their campaign, because clearly they did not resonate enough to get more people out to vote, or at least equal to the amount that voted in 2019. Do you agree with that? That they were shouting at each other and not speaking to the people?
Yeah, I think what that is why the NTA, strange enough, the majority of our support base, the young voters, and that would be, and I say young, politically young, anyone under 40, I will see that as politically young, because those are the persons who are not caught up in the house of mommy and daddy's PNM or UNC till they die, so you're going to tell us who to vote for. That is where the NTA got a lot of our votes. And it shows that type of politics, it is probably dying. It is not the thing of, let me keep saying a PNM or UNC till I die, regardless of the issues or whatever. And sometimes it takes people to sit back and appreciate the fact that, listen, those people who we are supposed to serve, they are sending a message to us. They're sending a message that type of politics we are not interested in. We are turning a blind eye. But it's not so much. I mean, when you look at it, it was a 34% voter turnout in 2019. It moved to 30%. Arguably, that is just about the same you will get in most countries around the world with a secondary national election. And in a general election, when people say we only get a 60% voter turnout, 60 to 65 is what you get for most developed countries. And
but some would suggest the stakes are so much higher now because of what is happening in the country, and it was an intense campaign. So to say, well, that's what it is generally, no, it dropped. It dropped by quite a bit.
No. I'm saying that, I agree with you, Paul. I'm saying that is what it is generally because of people saying, look, that this is the same old. I'm seeing nothing different. I'm seeing, so there would have been that degree of disenchantment of persons saying, well, look, I am not here about this, the pelting stones and the attacks, and people want to know what can be done for me. And the sad thing is the older persons, they are getting less, they are getting more frustrated. They're seeing no value in it. And again, what I picked up heavily in that 4% drop, you would have seen the difference. The PNM drop went from 160,000 to 130. So there's 30,000 people from the PNM virtually turned a blind eye or voted for the NTA, some of them. But in the UNC's case, it moved from 200 to 190, not 170, because they keep using the 170. But remember, there was an accommodation that we got 31 seats that the UNC did not get. So you have to put that 190 in context to 200. So there was a 10,000 vote difference in UNC 2019 to UNC NTA 2023. There was a 30,000 difference with the PNM. So those 40,000 would have been the 4% difference. So 75% of that voter turnout would have been disenchanted PNM people who are saying, look, you see me, I'm a PNM till I die, but I can't vote for anybody else, so I'm just not voting. So for every 4 persons who did not vote in 2019 that voted in 2023, 3 would have been pre-PNM supporters from 2019.
One of the interesting developments in the election, and I'm seeing now a development from that, is that, I don't know if to call him a nemesis, but Philip Alexander has now put out a statement saying that he's willing to work with all political parties in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. That had not been his contention before. You decided that you were willing to work with political parties before the election, and you told us that the PNM was your first choice, but you were open to working with anybody in the interest of a better Trinidad. Yes, you told us that.
No, I said that they were the first ones that I was able to communicate with, not about forming a political alliance, but a strategic working relationship to help the biggest concern in the country at the time, which is to reduce crime. So policy, working with the PNM as a policy matter to help the country to form an alliance with the PNM in a strategic way towards winning an election. That would be 2 different things. I just wanted to clarify.
Thanks. Do you think that then that your strategy, particularly as a new party, of aligning yourself with an established party was one that paid off, as opposed to now Philip Alexander now jumping in that realm because he realized that, well, now trying to wait on your own as a new party is very, very difficult in this country?
Well, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could have seen it and Philip Alexander couldn't have seen it. So that says a lot about Philip Alexander. Having said that, he actually spoke about forming an alliance with the UNC just before the local government election, and nobody really took him on when he said that he is willing to, unless they stand by his principles and his all his blah blah blah, and he was ignored. Nobody really listened to that. So he did make something about that before. But the interesting thing is that most of his comments, probably about 9 out of 10 of his comments before the election, was always to attack Gary Griffith and Kamala Persad-Bissessar, very little about the PNM. And that is why it is that he got that name, the PP got that name of the PNM B team. They actually had persons in PP jerseys, put in PNM jerseys over them. And still, after the election, he still spends all his time attacking political parties opposed to the PNM and very little about the PNM. In fact, he's now become the PRO for Keith Rowley, where he's attacking the Guyana government for being concerned about Keith Rowley's comment. He's concerned if Gary Griffith has a comment to make to Keith Rowley when he's the Prime Minister of Gulf. So he has become the PRO for the PNM. So it is really interesting that you're the virtual PRO for the PNM, and now you're saying that you want to work with other political parties. You know who you want to work for. But again, I know the PNM stance and how they operate. They will rather work with Bin Laden than to bring PP on board with them. And so that's not going to happen.
But the PNM has stated that they will always go elections alone anyway. So
correct, yeah.
They've always said that.
That's their position. What's next in the next? Because as many political analysts and commentators have said, local government was basically the start of a general election campaign. You can have a little rest now. We're going to Christmas, school opening, people focused on taking the children back to school, and then the approach to positioning political entities like yourself are going to move toward focusing on 2025. Is there a particular strategy you have in mind?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first thing you just spoke about with the political analysts, so many of them, Paul, and they call themselves political analysts, and I see them as political opinionists, because 99% of the time, most of them, every single thing you say, you could see that there's a political bias to one party or another. Some of them will always criticize one party, always say good about another party. We really need to get proper political analysts. I'm not saying that there are a few. There are 1 or 2 that are very
like,
yeah. Again, I'm not going to because I call 1 or 2 names, they'll say, "Oh, so you find
well,
out."
Call 2 names that you think have credibility. You know, this who they have, you know.
Oh well, yeah. Well, I've seen Ralph Maraj at times. Unfortunately, like Mr. Ramsuloch, his comments have always been aligned towards benefiting the PNM. So there are certain persons that, I mean, sometimes you need to sit back and, are you really a political analyst, or are you using your voice because the media always wants to have someone be quoted, and because you're trying to help a political party, or because you're against another political party because what they did or didn't do for you. And criminologists, we have the same situation. We have criminal opinionists. Sometimes they are criminologists and they don't understand the role and function of a criminologist. So these 2 positions, it is unfortunate, and the media has to rush to them because they need a soundbite, they need a quote. And that is unfortunate, because these are very powerful positions that persons need to be neutral, they need to be impartial, they need to be scientific, Paul, that word that you said that I used, but they're not. And if first to move on in the concept of criminology in even politics, it is hope that these people try to have some degree of independence and partiality. As it pertains to the NTA, as I mentioned, the main thing that we have, the cut and trust, will be that youth vote. That is where those persons under 40, mommy, daddy, you can't tell me what to do. They are persons caught into social media, into technology. They just want to hear what it is you can provide. That person that has the ability to change my life and make it better for me. Don't tell me that that is a PNM. We actually lost a candidate. A candidate was thrown out of his house because his family told him, this is a PNM house, get out what you have done, you have embarrassed the family. That is how sometimes they're so caught up. Thankfully, the citizens, we are not caught up in that type of hatred. We have politicians who go out of their way to divide the country. We've heard it every time there's an election, you throw that race card, to the point of saying that a certain race was getting illegal firearms to kill another race. And this type of disgusting politics is what the young voters do not want. So that is what we intend to put focus on. Each and every young person under 40, we are going to explain to them, this is the political party that you need to be part of, because we want to push heavy on those youth voters, those young voters. And again, there still have been senior persons in that upper echelon that have shifted, but again, the majority of them, the PNM or the UNC till they die. And I am not here to criticize those individuals. That is your right. Even as those 130,000 people who voted for the PNM, you now have to face the reality for the next 16 months that your most fundamental right of safety and security is not going to be adhered to because our government who is incapable of providing you with those needs. But that was your right and you made that decision.
What are you hoping Paul Nahous is able to accomplish as an Alderman in Diego Martin?
Well, as it pertains to national development, definitely to assist in the development of Diego Martin Corporation. This is not about us trying to put a foothold to make us win any of the Diego Martin seats in the general election. Those are secondary things. I mean, let's be honest. But the main thing was for me to put somebody there to ensure that the needs of Diego Martin residents could be adhered to. I walked the length and breadth of Diego Martin, up in the hills in Bagatelle, in Simeon Road, in Scorpion and Caranage, in Paramin Hills. And all of these places, they've said they've never seen the political leader of the PNM, and that has been a PNM heartland. Many of them said they never saw the councillors. I just hope that Mr. Nahous can put some degree of not aha catcher, but advising them, listen, you have won as much as we have turned your safe seat into marginals. Just do your job. Don't be MIA for the next few years based on the position that you have now held. Do your job and do it well. And that's what, so his job, because of his experience working with the PNM as a PNM alderman, it is hoped that he can put some degree of maturity into them for them to understand, don't go missing in action for the next few years and try to help develop Diego Martin.
Does this have any implications to 2025? I know Nicole Griffith, didn't she run for a seat in Diego Martin in the past?
Yeah, in 20, and that's the excitement of Diego Martin politics. And when the UNC is on its own in Diego Martin seats are safe seats, as safe as even Port of Spain. So like in 2001, 2002, 2015, 2020, PNM versus UNC, PNM would have won by 8,000 votes. And it's just interesting, the 3 Diego Martin seats, it goes across the line, 8,000, 8,000, 8,000, PNM versus UNC. When the COP got into it, that's what Nicole Griffith, Rocky Garcia, and I think Joe Perez were the 3 representatives for the COP in 2007. They all got roughly 5,000 votes to the PNM's 8,000, and the UNC got about 1,000 or so. When it is that in 2010, when the alliance was formed, and Nicole Griffith, Rocky Garcia, and Garvin Nicholas, the 3 of them got just about 600 to 700 less votes than the PNM. So from 8,000 UNC versus PNM, with an alliance of that third party joining with the UNC, it moved to 600 to 700, and each of the 3 of them lost by that. And one of the things, my biggest concern with that 2010 was the disregard that the governance team of the People's Partnership had in Diego Martin. I don't think there was one major political meeting. Had there been some degree of support like what they did in Aruca, Maloney, Lupino, Bonaire, those 3 seats would have gone to the People's Partnership. It would have been 32-9. We would have been able to have constitutional reform to amend this first past the post and even change the Privy Council if that is what was required. And also that would have been the end of Keith Rowley, Colin Imbert, and Amy Brown in politics. Look how things could have happened.
Are we going to see Guy Griffith back in the Senate soon?
Well, in 2025, I don't know about the Senate, but again, as I said, the NTA, we are not.
The predecessor can appoint temporary senators whom she thinks can make a contribution. Your expertise is national security. I'm sure there are bills that will be coming before the Senate and the House regarding national security. You may be an option.
Well, Paul, you know, the way I've lived my life from spending 17 years in the military, being the youngest officer during the attempted coup, being the first one back with a UN peacekeeping medal, I fight my battles and I earn whatever it is that I get. I am not here to ask for handouts. I'm not here to ask for gifts or rewards. The 6 seats that the UNC has in the upper house have been 6 seats based on the UNC within 19 seats in the lower house. So the NTA, and that's the same when people say the NTA should have asked the UNC for some safe seats in corporations. No, we're here to earn our respect. We're here to earn our worth. And if and when we have Senate seats, it's because we would have earned our position in government by winning seats in the lower house.
I want to move the conversation to crime and have a really sober conversation about what's happening now. I know it could end up in a conversation about who is incompetent and who is not incompetent, but I really don't want it could end up there, right? But I mean, we all have to be really concerned with what we're seeing. You would have been privy to a lot of data, and I know you're always very careful about not undermining national security. So I respect that. But what is happening now? Why are we seeing what we're seeing now?
Unfortunately, Paul, it has to do again with the politicizing of national security. It is something that I've tried to change tremendously. I think I'm the only minister in government in the history of Trinidad and Tobago that actually was a minister that did not hold up a political portfolio. I was not UNC, COP, ABC, or XYZ when I became Minister of National Security. I would love to see all Attorney Generals and Ministers of National Security have the same neutral perception, because when I did that, it helped tremendously in my measured success as Security Minister with the highest reduction in serious crime in 30 years. You can't politicize national security. Anytime you start doing that, you're going to fail. And inclusive of the police. I mean, even what Independence Parade is coming up. And the police and unfortunately, it's not to knock the police, it's not even to knock the government. It is naturally the DNA of politicians, and they try to influence the police service. There's an Independence Parade coming up, and I'm the only commissioner of police that will not, previous commissioner of police that will not be invited to the police admin building based on instructions by the government. And these are things that are very unfortunate. When you start doing that, this is not about NTA versus UN, PNM, or Gary versus Fitzgerald Hines. This is about good versus evil. This is about a prime minister should be saying, I am turning aside my ego, my hatred, my bitterness, and let's find an avenue to solve the problem. I provided that as Minister of National Security with the highest reduction in serious crime, as I said, in 30 years. I provided that as the Commissioner of Police with the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. We have shut down over 100 odd things, and those things would have been critical towards pegging back criminals. You know, people will always speak about, they will try to turn it into a debate about COVID, and I could give all the things to show it's nonsense. But it's not just about the success we had in 2018 and 2021 about COVID. People felt safer. They had a greater degree of respect for the police, and not because of the officers changing their personality now. There was a focus on public relations, customer service, making police officers accessible, working closely with the Police Complaint Authority, the DPP's office, high visibility, a rapid response, making sure that you can have app reporting, online reporting. Now we've gone back to the old-time policing, where 15 police officers would be in a station for the whole day waiting for one person to walk in the station to make a report. But what I did and Dwayne Gibbs, we transformed the police service to have officers out in the streets. You good? Something you said there, Paul?
What's driving it, though? What's driving it? I'm sorry, rain is coming down very heavily, so I apologize for the background noise. But is it the narco industry that's driving it? The gang on gang murders to take control of this narco industry? We just saw the $21 million cocaine thing that seems to be fueling some violence in Guayari and Grandi and stuff. And so what's in the underbelly of this crime?
Right, and you know, it's interesting to say that. It goes right back to my concept about criminologists. There's one criminologist, if West Indies, if TKR lose a game tomorrow, he's going to blame it on the Colombian Mexican mafia. Every single time Darius speaks about crime, because that's the only thing he did research on in law enforcement, he speaks, he said Dana Cital was killed because of the Colombian Mexican drug cartel. It's always based on that. Let us not put focus on that. We could put focus right now on what could be done immediately. Quick wins. Quick wins is what I did as Commissioner of Police. It took me a year to transform officers into understanding that. A high visibility, a rapid response. You call 999, you know there's going to be someone.
Gary, I'm fine with that. But I just want people to understand, if we could get a sense for myself anyway.
Sure.
What is driving it? What is the reason that there's this much violence? Is it a narco economy money thing? What is the genesis of it?
Okay, I'll explain. Because crime is the criminological theory of crime. Crime is a product of opportunity. The greater the opportunity, the less the deterrent, the greater possibility criminals will commit a crime. So if it is you turn the police service into something that is effective, you know, as soon as you jump that wall for home invasion, you know, by the time you jump back over, police will be there, which is what we did in Highland Park and other places. There were home invasions under my watch, but by the time you jump back over the wall, we took your wicket. We know they had an operative team like SWAT that criminals feared. You have to put fear into these individuals. You have to make, so that is what is driving it now. So the drive is not more drugs or whatever. The drive is that the criminals understand that I can go to a residence nightclub, drop 3 bullets on someone, walk away, and it'll take 30 minutes before police will show up, even though it's opposite the commissioner's residence, 1 minute from St. James Station, 3 minutes from St. Clair Station, because that is why we had the operational command center, the commissioner's command center, GPS tracking on all of the police vehicles to monitor their area of responsibility, monitor their response. we use it in a scientific way. And by doing that, the criminals realized the product of opportunity was no longer there. So it pegged them back. It didn't stop crime, but it prevented the home invasions. It put an end to kidnapping. So the use of technology and the scientific aspects of predictive policing worked. When you shut
and those
ignorance,
things still like in existence, the operational center, etc., and they still
no. They've all been dismantled, because had these things, and again going back to even 2013 when we had the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup, it was to form a national operations center to ensure proper synergy between different arms of the protective services. That no longer takes place. It has now been assigned to the SSA, which is as ridiculous as you could get, because that NOC could have been beneficial in dealing with natural man-made disasters, even the Paria situation where everyone twiddled their thumbs for several hours. And so the NOC was something that was critical. The Operation Command Center, we were watching all of the police vehicles, so we can then tell a police officer, why is your car parked up at this house for the last 2 hours when they're supposed to be on patrol? Why are you driving 80 miles an hour on Rice Road 4 p.m. on a Friday when there's no distress call? It means that you're using a siren to overtake. That is how you measure performance, make police officers accountable, make them accessible, getting the public to buy into them, giving more information through the app reporting, the online reporting. That app was the biggest app they had in Trinidad. We will get and Tobago. We were getting information to prevent crime from taking place. That has been shut down. Now what they're doing is to put numbers to make it cosmetic. They've been virtually shutting down dozens of rare echelon units such as cybercrime, the white-collar crime unit, getting these officers to go out on the streets, which is not the way to go, because these units are critical towards ensuring the success of the front line. So that's it, Paul, in a nutshell. The product of opportunity, the criminals now see that they can do something and commit the crime because there's not going to be a visible presence.
Does the police have a manpower issue, or is it a management issue?
Not at all. The establishment is about 1,500 less. And that is not the fault of the police service. When I was Minister of National Security, I understood that, because you bring in batches of 100 every 6 months, sorry. So you have 200 a year, but you lose 200 through retirement, suspension, death, and resignation. So you're never going to get to that full establishment if you keep doing what you're doing. As a minister, we changed it to 3 batches of 300 by moving outside of the police barracks, because it could only hold 100 per batch. And all of a sudden, had that continued, in 4 years, we'll have our full establishment. But this was one of the hundreds of things that Gary Griffith, as minister, they shut down, and also as commissioner of police, they shut down. So we are never going to get to that full establishment. Having said that, it is not about increased quantity, it is enhanced quality that is required. Because on par with police officers in relation to our population, it is among the highest in the Americas. So it's not that because we are short 1,500 officers, we are having a problem. We had the same number of officers in 2021, and people were complaining that Gary Griffith had too many blue lights, too many sirens. A few moments later was not accidental. So it is how you utilize these officers, it makes a difference.
I mean, it's a very depressing period, I think, for a lot of Trinidadians and Tobagonians with regard to the crime situation. And I'm not even talking about those here. I'm talking about the diaspora too, who are concerned with where the country seems to be going with regard to crime, and not understanding how did we get to this place, because we didn't seem to be as violent a country for when a lot of them were growing up, and all of a sudden we have transformed into being quoted in the top 10, with murders, and be on track to have, at this point, to equalizing at least, or being very close to, if not surpassing, the murder rate of last year, which was a historic high.
Yeah, but sorry.
And I just don't know. I mean, I think citizens are just, why is there no dent being made in this problem?
Yeah, but the good news is it can change. The same way we were able to change it in 2013 and 2015, and then after governments changed. The same way we changed it in 2019 and 2021. People felt safe. 2021 was just 2 years ago. But so the point is, those things reignited. You reboot those things, we will put back the fear in the criminals, make them, they actually feel now they control drug blocks, they control areas. And one of the things that is also important is that aspect of taken away the rogue elements in the police service. When it is I push heavily with drug testing, with polygraph testing for officers in specific locations, a lot of those things have shut down now. And now we have police officers going back now with intelligence. We'll have them going back and being transferred back to locations where I moved them, where they were controlling drug blocks and so forth. And I have all the information comes to me. And it is unfortunate, but these are the things that played a big part. When it is police officers involved in linking with rogue elements in one area, you don't have the evidence to arrest them, but I have the authority to reassign them, to put them in a position behind a desk somewhere in the other part of Trinidad and Tobago that they can't do that damage. And all of those things played a part. As soon as I left, hundreds of transfers, they went right back to the location, so they control the areas. They are involved in some of them. The reports you got was they're involved in escorting, controlling drug blocks. Those are the things that could change, because, and this is not to knock, I'm talking about a very small percentage, but those individuals now have the authority, because what happened, I affected big business in the criminal enterprise, in the underworld of the police service. They wanted me out, they whispered in the right ears, and unfortunately, certain politicians, they listen to the last voice and they make a decision. And now the country is paying the price. But I said, it can change around. It can change. If I don't know if the country could wait another 16 months with what is going on. It is hope that this government will take away the politics. I am always willing to be a patriot before a politician. And I know exactly what is required to push this thing back. A quick point finally is about the border protection. I heard my political leaders spoke about border protection. I drafted the plan for the government of a border protection unit to assist in the problems of illegal guns entering the country. Keith Rowley spent all his time speaking about legal firearms. Again, 2 years later, 2 years since the Stanley John report and the audit report, not one person has been arrested as it pertains to bribery or corruption or extortion to get a firearm under my watch since I left. The 8 persons, 4 were whilst I was commissioner of police, because we did sting operations. 2 persons for signing my name on the without my approval, which is not bribery or corruption, and 2 others based on bribery after I left. So all of these lies about this massive well-oiled criminal industry, we have put so much emphasis and resources in the police to go on a witch hunt and a fishing expedition. 1.4 million citizens, 7,000 police officers, 55 firearm dealers, 4,500 got firearms, and not one has been arrested for bribery or corruption. But we had 70 officers spending time on that, but not one police officer has any emphasis on dealing with illegal firearms, which has contributed to 100% of all murders committed by firearm. We can't peg it back. Getting illegal firearms seized in Trinidad is not an issue. We will get them. But
the issue is not manpower. Is the police service presently being effectively managed?
That is for the Police Service Commission to decide. They were handpicked by a president who decided not to adhere to the law. So in that Police Service Commission, gentlemen, there's a financial consultant and a speaking consultant who have no knowledge whatsoever in law enforcement. And they selected someone who actually placed 22nd in 2018 by international law enforcement experts. So we keep blaming Erla Christopher. It is not Erla Christopher's fault. She didn't impose herself on us. That Police Service Commission needs to account to the country. And they should all resign by what they did in their selection process. Erla Christopher was a value to me as a DCP admin. There's right now, probably 20 years ago, an Erla Christopher or Stephen Williams is what the country would require. Now what the country needs is a very highly tactical, strategic, operationally trained police commissioner who understands strategy, tactics, dealing with law enforcement, dealing with counter-revolutionary warfare, which is why Jamaica selected a lieutenant colonel in the army to be their commissioner of police. Different times will cause for different types of leadership. Now is not the time for gabardine, holding a cane, and singing Kumbaya. You need to take the fight to the criminals, and that is the type of commissioner that was required. If it's not me, there are others who can do the same type of policing. The administrative behind the desk is not what we need at this time.
Gary, thanks for being with us. We appreciate your time and your always willingness to engage with us.